There you are.
Here.
There you are.
We got matching
All right.
jackets on today. Look at
I
us. We
know.
got the
I know.
uniform.
I know. Heart Investment Group uniform. Brought to you by Harry Rosen. No free ads here. No free ads. Okay. It's 4:16.
Yeah.
Want to get right into it?
Yeah, let's get going.
It's going to be a beautiful weekend. So let's get everybody in and out here.
Yeah.
All right. Beautiful weekend, but we're back in the red zone starting today. Right?
Yeah.
What,
Looks like it.
what does that mean for the Hart family?
Means the activities are a lot lighter. Soccer got kiboshed completely.
Yeah.
So 4 soccers we were supposed to have this weekend are on the shelf. So looks like that is, and hockey is going to be lighter than it should have been as well. So it's not ideal. Certainly not what I want.
When will it all end? It's like you're
Soon.
living in a dream or nightmare, whatever.
Exactly.
Uh, Big week for you. You've been quiet this week because you've just been back at school, pretty
Yeah.
much. The
Yeah.
Hedgeye School of Hedgeye.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that before we get into what else you did this week?
Yeah, for sure. So Hedgeye, who I think I've talked about a number of times, just it's their macro process that I've studied for the last few years. Every time this year, at this time of year, they end up having their summit where they bring in some guests, hedge funds, traders, economists, many different people, and so I had the pleasure of watching some really interesting people this week. We had Steph Pomboy, who's a really interesting economist, speak about valuations, and her targets were pretty shocking. She also brought some points that are worth paying attention to, just around what the rating agencies are thinking about from Bitcoin on the corporate treasury and how that's going to look. George Conclaves, who talked about bonds, he's a bond strategist and expert, talking about where he thought and what he thought was happening. There's lots of talk about this SLR, which is kind of the bank's lending facilities. So lots of things covered there. Mike Taylor, who's a hedge fund a manager, who is really key last year. He spoke about the vaccines when they started to come out, and he was very early on saying these things are going to work. He was one of the few guys that I saw who had the kind of vaccine background and understanding to really understand how it was going to work, and he was bang on. And so he was interesting to hear what he had to say this week, and the calls and the companies he's looking at. So got some great ideas from that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we launched our options podcast this week. We talked a little bit about that last week because we weren't sure. We hadn't
Yes.
launched it. We weren't sure how it was going to be received because the topic was so heavy. But probably the best reception we've had yet.
I think
Right?
so. Yeah.
People loved it. Shared it all over social media, and our manager at the bank loved it.
Yeah.
Everybody loved it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hey, we're going to keep bringing on those guests. This week we did one of our own.
Yep.
We talked about passive versus active investing. We talked about NFTs. I won't give away what those are, but if you didn't like Bitcoin, you're going to hate these. And what else? Changing economic phases, going into quad 4. I don't know if you'll talk a little bit about that today.
Sure.
And the new segment, Ben brought some charts this time. Hey, the
Exciting.
technology. We just keep rolling out the technology here, right?
That's
Ben
right.
brought some charts to talk about his favorite subject these days. I'll keep that as a teaser. And yeah, so it was good though. I think it was one of our better ones. And then next week, do we have a guest lined up for next week already?
Well, we haven't confirmed them up, but like we're 90% sure it's going to be.
Okay.
I'll mention
Yeah.
it anyways.
Sure.
Yeah. So we're 90% sure we're going to bring Tom Savage next week. He's one of the lead portfolio managers with Picton's merger arbitrage fund. So they are obviously experts in merger arb. They all are also experts in SPACs. So that should be exciting to pick their brains on what merger arb looks like and what's happening in the SPAC market. So that's what we got lined up.
Love a good SPAC. Okay, so why don't we get into it? Why don't you tell us,
Yep.
besides watching Zoom for 3 days straight,
Yeah.
learning all the latest and greatest, what else? What'd you do in the portfolios this week?
Yeah, so quite a bit of action this week as well, and I think that as I mentioned, I think on the call last week, we started to see some of those early warning signals that say maybe we're starting to transition. So I had reduced tech, as I mentioned, and that was a good decision because tech sold off this week. A little bit of a rally today. Nasdaq closed up 0.7, but was down 3% yesterday. So not an explosive rally. So if we're starting to see a new trend, you'd probably see that up 4 or 5% today, but we didn't. So I think we're still kind of in that cycle where we have growth plus inflation, but you're starting to see some of the early warning signs where China and South Korea and some of these other countries are rolling over, as you're also seeing tech roll over. And sometimes people want to say that's rate related, and maybe it is. So rates have moved up. So just because rates have moved up doesn't mean inflation's going to go away. So what I did this week is I added energy into the portfolios. Added a couple of new names, Guess, Children's Place, added to the Overstock position, added to Sally Brand's position, added to Corn, and added a little bit of financials, US financials on a sell-off on Wednesday. So it was a pretty active week. Actually, forgot to mention, I did a couple things today as well. In the portfolio, added to the Visa position today as well. They sold off with some news that I think is pretty irrelevant, but I think it's a good opportunity to add at better prices.
What are you seeing? I noticed you mentioned there that you bought some retail brands, right? Like Children's Place and Guess. What are you seeing in that space that makes you want to do that? Because I've seen you do that before with some other brands as well. Was it in that space that's interesting right now?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these companies are in a good position because they've marked down their inventory. There's people ready to spend and go out, and they're coming off horrendous numbers last year. And so you saw some of the names already moved, like Under Armour and Capri, some of those things that we hold. Starting to think about cycling out of those names and looking at maybe some of the other places that have good potential, where Guess and Children's Place would be, they're trading at a huge discount to their previous multiples. So based on looking at them right now, if we continue on this trend, they're going to have great numbers. Sometime in the next 3-4 months, they could have still 30 to 40% upside.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, I noticed there's a few new people in here that I haven't seen in here before. So if you have any questions, there's a chat box. You can put it in the chat. There's a Q&A button at the bottom as well. Or you can raise your hand if you want to do a voice question at the end. But you can put your question in any time, and we'll get to it. Okay. Okay. Anything else for this week, or you want to talk about what's in the news, what's coming up? What do you want to do next?
Yeah, so I would say that the biggest kind of headline that we didn't talk about yet was the 10-year. And so I did mention in my daily, when we're getting into that top end of that range, that 175 was kind of the higher level that I thought we could reach. As I look at that this week, and I think we've talked a little bit about that, but if these rates continue to move up, you're going to have a massive amount of pressure on the U.S. economy. I looked at some stats this week. Presently, right now, with rates where they are, the U.S. government uses 15% of their tax receipts to service their debt. So you look at that at a present level, and you say, what happens if that number continues to move up? Can they continue to do very well as a country and an economy? The answer is probably not. if you got that US 10-year to double and their carrying costs just for their debt was up to 30%, it's going to be a massive drag on the economy. So we had Powell speak this week, and he said, things are fine. And the bond market seemed to say, I disagree with you. So for the first time in a long time, we had, that steepening yield curve where you had all the economists come out and say, oh, this must be great news. We got a steepening yield curve. So that means the economy is in great shape. So what we saw this week is we actually saw a flattening on the long end, which is a signal that maybe things aren't as great as we expected. And so the 5 and the 10-year were up quite a bit this week, but that long end came down today. The last couple of days, you've seen the long end start to move down. So that's not healthy. Powell talked about this Operation Twist, which I think we mentioned before, where you sell the short-term bonds and buy longer terms, trying to flatten that curve. And so I think he's in that position where he's trying to assess, do I do that Operation Twist, or do I do YCC, which is that yield curve control, where they try to bring that pressure down on the longer end? If they do that, it should be good news for growth names again. So I guess the question really is the market going to make them do it, or are they going to do it in advance? And unfortunately, I think it's probably the market that's going to make them do it at some point. But we're really early on that. I think we're months away from kind of equity markets selling off around that and forcing their hand. But it's certainly something that is worth paying attention to right now.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So in the next week,
Your favorite.
yeah, I know I'm trying to curb my enthusiasm here, but we got the Real Vision Crypto Conference.
That's right. Yeah.
We'll be tending together at your house. I'll bring the popcorn.
Yeah.
I'll bring the snacks, and
Yeah.
we'll hunker down and learn what's next for that. So we'll have all kinds of great news for you next week.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a good one. Certainly, we're still going to be here. We're still going to be working. So if you need anything, please let us know. We're still going to be keeping an eye on what's happening in the world and the markets. But last year the crypto conference, when I went to it, it was unbelievable, the amount of content and how much further looking this ecosystem is than really kind of traditional, I'd say, finances. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the people are currently thinking about. I spoke with Mark Yusko today, and he's one of the guest speakers. So he's always looking ahead and thinking about what's coming. We had a good talk today around his thoughts around Bitcoin. And he said, for the first time since he's owned it, he's considering what happens now and where do we go from here. And so for the first time, he's considering maybe taking some profits off and reallocating to some DeFi companies. He's looking at it and saying, if Bitcoin goes from 50,000 to 100,000, it's good. But if some of these DeFi companies have the potential to go from 1 to 10, that's obviously a better risk reward. So it'd be interesting to see what and where they're looking and considering. We haven't talked about Ethereum yet, but there's a pile to go through, and there's probably 100 speakers. Not that we'll get through them all, but be a ton of content to digest.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that no matter what your stance is on crypto and Bitcoin, it's important for us to be as educated as we can on it, right? So we can make the right decisions moving forwards. And Jose is busting my chops about not having a tie on. That's my first question in the chat here. So, Ben, why don't I have a tie?
Because we wanted to look uniform and look like we have a similar matching attire.
Yeah, see, spoken from the boss. So I broke out a tie a few weeks ago. Everybody was impressed. Ben's like, don't want to be upstaged, I guess. That's what happened there.
I think so.
Okay, you come with the content, I'll come with the fashion. Okay, let's keep it that way.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair.
All right. Okay, what else next week as far as looking to do in portfolios or whatnot?
Yeah, so we'll see if this follows through. So we have, to that kind of that trigger with the yields moving up, and we'll see what happens now. This was triple witching day where you get options and future all exercising at the same time. As we go into month end too, you usually see portfolios reposition. So yeah, I'd expect the market to be open or up the next couple of days. So we'll see if we get carry through in technology, or if this is just a sideways to down trend. So so I continue to look at that. Still appears that commodities are expanding. We saw oil sell off and then bounce back nicely today. So if that continues, then it keeps us in that quad four momentum, which is growth plus inflation. And so if that's the case, we'll continue with that trend. But I'm very, very focused too on that 10-year, and when those yields stop rising. Historically, the bond market has been much smarter than the equity market to signal that we've officially changed. So when that 10-year stops rising and starts going the other direction, that's a signal to move back to play serious defense.
Gotcha. Okay, anybody have any questions besides
your tie?
My lack of tie situation? Anybody else? Lyle.
Lyle's got a question.
Just let him in here. Talk. Lyle, you're live. Go ahead.
Okay, maybe this question is should go offline. That's me waiting for the tiger to arrive. No. My question is, you mentioned a couple of podcasts you've just held. I never heard anything about them, or am I missing something? Was there, are we supposed to do a pre-subscription that I missed, or let's see.
Yeah, so that's a fair point. We can, what I'll do now that we have this one, I can blast it out in an email, a group email. I think I sent one out last week, but I haven't been sending them out for after each event. But certainly that's a good point, and we'll add that. Well, maybe we'll do that on distribution on the Monday daily, so that it's in there and you can click on it and go into it. Does that make sense, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. When we started rolling them out, we just kind of wanted to see how the first few went before we really started promoting them. But they are gaining speed just through social media now. But we definitely, that's a great point there, Lyle. As far as we should definitely start sending them out to our clients directly, I think. So I think a lot of people are already subscribed to the YouTube channel. That way you'll get notifications as well. You'll get email notifications. So once you go on YouTube, first there's a subscribe button. Go ahead and do that, and then you'll get notified every week or anytime we upload anything. So that's probably good to do that.
Sorry, I'm not.
Oh yeah.
I don't get it. I never heard anything about the podcast event, and so my question is, if there is a podcast event held,
yep.
Yes, I'm interested in receiving the recording of it.
Yep.
How is it that I didn't have access or didn't know about it? Or is it restricted to certain people, or do we have to?
Yeah, no. Yeah, sorry, Lyle, it's actually recorded. So we record it and then it's edited after the fact. And then, so there's no live event. And then it's put up on our YouTube channel, and then we push it out usually by social media. But like Ben said, we're going to start pushing it by email. So you'll get the notification. We usually put them out on Sundays, so you'll get an email probably Sunday or Monday on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just got to run it through the compliance cog.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that's not directly for clients, like this is for all what we do Fridays are clients only, so nobody else can actually view these. Anything that's not clients, we have to run it through compliance before they have to watch the video first. So
yeah,
give us approval on it. So it usually takes a few days. So Malcolm has a question. Why such a big move this week in Galaxy Digital?
It's a great question. Been watching it too here, trying to see what's going on. I guess my feeling is there must be something else going on behind the scenes. There isn't a ton of ways to obviously play what Galaxy's trying to do. Novogratz has been speaking a couple of times in the last couple of weeks too, so maybe some of the institutions have taken hold of it there. But I don't have a specific answer for you, but it's obviously been a heck of a rip in the last couple of days, and something I continue to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So we talked a
Okay.
little bit today, actually, Scott and I, about it. And, Novogratz is one of the few guys that is kind of a crossover, where he comes from the hedge fund world, the finance world, and was really early on in crypto. And so he kind of sits in the middle. And I would think they're probably trying to do some kind of hybrid finance stuff type business. And so, there's lots of still potential to come from that company.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an exciting one for sure. Okay, any other questions? Nothing right now. Okay, that's great. Ben, you have anything else you want to add before we kick off this beautiful weekend?
I think that's it. I think there's still, continue lots of things to do. I mean, we talk every Friday before this call, and we have a discussion around what's going on throughout the week. And, there's always something to do within the portfolios, especially as we start to get into this transition-y type phase of the cycle. You got to always pay attention and make some small adjustments as I continue to do that. And so, want to keep that going, and looking forward to next week.
Awesome. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.